Welcome back to this day 3 of the Vision for 2020 conference. We're now doing it from home, live from our homes. And today we have Richard Hill first up, and I thought I'd just show you where we are now in version 2.0. We had Vision for 2020 in January, where we're able to actually meet in person. A little bit different to how things are at the end of this year. We're doing holding the vision. So I think this is a really good topic and thought process for what we're going to have from Richard today. He's going to be talking a bit about curiosity, COVID, possibilities, and all that kind of jazz. And I'm going to hand it over to Richard. And I guess, Richard, you can take it away and I'll stop my share. And if you have anything to share, you can share it. Otherwise, we will just be heading over to you talking, Richard.
Okay.
So welcome and thanks for coming.
Yes, it's good. I didn't have to go far to get here, which was excellent. So so welcome everyone. We'll have by looks of things, people are enjoying the opportunity to look at things at their own best time, which is good. I was going to get everybody to turn on their microphones and cheer loudly at every now and again just to keep me happy, but we'll get by without that. The essence of what the talk today. Now, I'm not actually using a PowerPoint. I feel a bit like Dan Siegel, who, well, if anybody knows him, he doesn't do things. I was at a wonderful conference, the PowerPoint didn't work, and he said, "Oh, that's all right," and he just rattled it all off by memory. And then the next speaker, the PowerPoint didn't work, and he said, "No, I'm not Dan Siegel. I need more PowerPoint." But I've got a series of notes because it's really about talking about. I hope as you're sitting there, you've got a pen and a paper and you're taking a few notes, because there might even be some things later on I'll ask you to work on, and we could do them live. Just depends on what we've got here to work with. But I want to start. So my subject is about curiosity and possibility, and of course, in total reasonableness, we've included the idea of COVID. What do we do with COVID? Well, I think COVID sits under a different umbrella, or an umbrella of which COVID is just one of the sorts of elements. So in itself, it's not the problem. It's an expression of a different problem. And very often what we need to do when we do talk about things is we need to actually talk about what we mean by these words that we use. Certainly there is a general consensus of agreement to what words mean, but as more complex the word becomes, the more it is talking about, and the more widely it's talked about in different circles, words can take on different meanings and different relationships. And in the world of neuroscience, and when we talk about and psychotherapy and philosophy, we talk about mind. And in a group of 10 very well-versed people, you might well find 10 totally different definitions of the way in which they use the word. So the reason that I just preamble it is to give that sense of understanding and appreciation that despite the fact that we know what a word, have a way of thinking of what a word means when we're doing so, if the speaker is kind enough and takes the time to just give a set of parameters and indications of the way they're using it, it stops that battle that goes on, saying, "Oh, I don't think it means that," and "I don't think it." It's fine that you may or may not think differently to mine, but this is the purpose, the perspective that I'm utilizing in this frame of the talk today. So the first word is the word curiosity. And it's such an interesting activity that the word describes. And I've been working on the nature of curiosity, how it impacts the individual. I've been beautifully mentored by a wonderful man named Ernest Rossi, who sadly passed away a couple of months ago. So he's been my mentor for about 15 years or so. And he almost became a a bit of an academic father to me. So we would talk about things, and hi Nancy, good to see you. And we would talk about things at great depth and great length. And curiosity is a word that I think, in relation to a number of other words in the English language, it gets sort of squished in and it gets limited and restricted, but then it gets owned by that limitation and that restriction. Now, we see this in product names, like we talk about an esky, and actually that's a product, that's the name, that's actually the brand name of a cooling sort of box that we use, or a Hoover, which is actually for vacuum cleaners. And now what we've done is we've actually shifted from Hoover, and we say, oh, have you got a Dyson? Get the Dyson out. And someone will go in and get their Sanyo something and go, oh, it can be very confusing. But these words do that. Now, curiosity is a word that I think has been compressed into a limited frame of its value. And then that's become so popular that I'm finding it very difficult to change it. So I'm going to actually change the nature of the word in a moment. We'll talk as we go through. Because curiosity is principally thought of as that interest in how things work, that wanting to know what it's about, wanting to get more information about the situation, the question, the problem, the issue, to try and get to an answer, which is really good. Well, of course, curiosity, its end result is always some sort of answer. But curiosity for information takes you to an answer that is related to information, how it works, what it's about, what its elements are. And it's a terrific aspect of curiosity. But I think it's limited because we actually have what we might call an overly, or curiosity for information stuck world. And it's, I won't describe it now because it's complex, but what we call the first stage of the creative cycle, just the information. So somebody says, tell me what that's about. And you go, it's about this. And they go, good, okay. Now tell me what the next thing's about. And you go, well, shouldn't we do something with the information we've already got? No. I'm not interested in that. I'm just interested in the new thing, new picture, new thing. Oh, squirrel. So we're sort of a little bit ADD-ish in some respects, a little bit hyperactively wanting to increase the degree of knowledge that we have in order to manage and cope. Of course, the trouble is, the secondary trouble that we have in this world is that knowledge is not made available. Knowledge that is made available is not always true or correct. So that causes secondary problems. But anyway, curiosity for knowledge through information. Now, the second element of curiosity for knowledge, is a curiosity for play, for playfulness, because knowledge can very easily and is often brought forward through playfulness, through serendipitous, non-directed, unregulated engagement with the elements. I mean, there's so many things. I'm just thinking that I've probably got something right nearby. It would be handy if I had it right nearby, but I'll get something else. But you might get something like, what's this? Oh, it's a roll of tape. Excellent. What does it do? You squeeze it out and then you put it on things. Now, see how I'm compressing this already? It's a roll of tape, it's adhesive, it sticks things. Suddenly this is going to become something very specific and very limited. Now, I might, on the other hand, go, oh, that's interesting. Oh my gosh, it's a roller. Oh, I hadn't thought of that. That's interesting. And, I can, oh, just a minute. This is one part. If I had 3 of these, I could juggle. Well, actually, if I had 3 of these, I couldn't juggle. But when you start to play, you start to see beyond the literal, beyond the curiosity for information literal. And you begin to look and engage in the metaphors and the representations. And dare I just add at this stage, before defining, the possibilities of something. There's a wonderful cartoon I saw where there's a caveman, and he's sitting there, and he's got a stone that's all carved out, and it's round and flat on the top of the bottom, and he's got it sitting on top of a tree stump, and they're looking at it saying, "Ah, the table." And of course, it's a wheel, but they haven't turned it the other way around and allowed it to roll. It's as simple as constraining and restricting your understanding of what something is by the nature of the curiosity you utilize. So we need the information, but then you play, and information can serendipitously emerge. So that's a wonderful thing too. So I now know I've got this, and I've got rolling things, and I've got all kinds of 3 or 4 possibilities here. And now I want to introduce the third of what I think is the most important curiosity, and that's the curiosity for meaning. So it needs to have self-relevance. And some people have pushed that element of curiosity aside and say, oh, well, that's all philosophical, or that's all, sitting in a legs crossed and contemplating your navel. It's all just sort of inward and very dreary, and it's not useful, because I can do this, and I can make a roller, and I can go and I can make a product and start a company and yada yada. But self-relevance, self-importance. I mean, Viktor Frankl, of course, spent a lot of his life talking about man's search for meaning. And I think that man's search for meaning is a natural element of curiosity. So what I would suggest to you all is that you engage in the concept of 3 connected, indivisible elements of curiosity, that we can highlight one side or the other, as we've done in our world and just highlighted curiosity for information, but that they can in themselves generate the other elements of curiosity if we allow the freedom to occur, and if we allow the concept of greater elements of curiosity to occur. So to battle and deal with this restriction of language, I'm now going to describe it, and in my new book, I'm going to describe it as dynamic curiosity. So this is curiosity that not only gets to an end point, that doesn't just get to an end point, it actually then dynamically can interplay and move forward into many other points and keep being expansive. The information is gathered, the play gathers more information, but once the meaning is attained, then it can be created with. And the reason why I say it can be created with is because something has to do the creativity. And when you create meaning, you make it self-relevant. And so here we come to another word that's really interesting that we use all the time. What is the self? Now, that's a bit annoying, because we use it all the time. Self-esteem and self-relevant, and this is, I like this, this is bad, I'm upset. All these things, there's this sense of self as if it is the dominant experience. And although it dominates when we feel it, because it fills our consciousness, this sense, because what is happening in our world, our conscious awareness of what is going on, when the self emerges into the equation, then those experiences are happening to someone. Now, it's sort of a neuroscience and lesson here, which we won't do in this situation. But there are a lot of things that occur below that self-awareness. There are a lot of things that occur in an awareness level, but haven't yet engaged with the self. So what is the self? The self is the emergent quality and property out of our collective experiences, so out of our memories. So in the brain, when you're doing the neuroscience, things come up into our awareness, and then you can see them interacting with memory areas of the brain, and then someone has a sense of feelings about that are personal. And so when you discover not only how something works, but the interesting and surprising ways in which it can work. But it's not until you give it self-relevance of, I can create something with those things. For example, when I was giving my little description, I was saying, oh, look, I've got this thing. If I had 3 of these, I could juggle. Now, when I imagined this as something I could throw up and down, I then got the feeling of, I'm throwing this up and down. But in the first couple of throws, it was just the act. It was sort of almost like what we call an idiomotor response. I was just had the idea of throwing, and so I was playing. Then I made it make sense, and suddenly I, or me, depending on the language you're using, whether you're initiating or in the receiving subject or object of the verb of throwing, it then becomes something that I can then create with. And then I might start juggling, and then all kinds of things. And of course, I immediately went to the realization, oh, that's right, I can't juggle. So myself has this perception of itself through my collections of memories. And in fact, I can remember when I did a juggling class, and yeah, I didn't learn how to juggle. So yeah, I probably don't know how to juggle. Now, of course, this brings us to introduce this other issue and difficulty of life as we live it, is when we enter into the memories have qualities because they have existed and they've had an environment and a context. So I could very easily recall and reframe and go back in my memory. So I've never learned how to juggle. Okay. But I go back to this class where I did have juggling classes and I didn't do very well in it. Now I can add a created emotion, a negative emotion to that experience. If I added back then, oh, I'm no good, I could never learn how to juggle. So then that emerges into my self, my nature of self now. And I go, oh, if I had 3 of these, I could juggle. Oh gosh, I don't know how to juggle. Then boom, it keeps, it's dynamic, keeps dynamically going on and says, oh yes, but you're not good at juggling. In fact, you're not very good. There's something wrong with you. You better not try and juggle because you're bad and you'll just ruin everything and there'll be problems. And down the rabbit hole you go. As different from, hey, wow, I didn't have such a good time juggling before. I just, what's wrong? What was going wrong? We'll talk about that, how curiosity turned on takes you further, but curiosity turned off is when it goes into fear, into anger, into dread, into negativity, and that turns you off. So, okay, there we are. I've overly worded this aspect of curiosity, possibly in many of your minds. And in fact, my feeling is it's still underworded or underclarified. There's lots more we can tease out of this. It's so interesting. I wonder if I've grasped it all. Is there a 4th one? I don't know. I'm open to that possibility. But let's assume for the moment we're just talking from where I am at the moment, which is these 3 elements of indivisible, dynamically engaged elements of curiosity that we are drawn to gathering information. We're drawn to playing so that we can serendipitously discover information. And we're drawn to finding meaning as we integrate that information into our memory relationships, to our memory that allows us to see there is a person that is engaging with this information. Having all those thoughts in your head sometimes makes you think, oh gosh, am I really just bonkers and annoying people with all these things, annoying myself, over essentializing. But I was watching Brave New World. I don't know if any of you seen the new series that was on, but it's the Aldous Huxley show. It's sort of the opposite side of 1984. 1984, it's all dystopian and you're manipulated and controlled and lied to, and you decide it's just easy to believe the lies. I wonder if that could ever happen in our world. Believe lies. And in Brave New World, they actually decide that the problem with the world is that we have too much emotional engagement with it, that if we actually just simplified ourselves, we could do it. And so they invented these lovely drugs, somas. So you could pop a drug, and it's so fascinating. They have little clickers, or a machine that clicks and pops out a pill, and you pop that. So the tiniest little thing happens, and suddenly all around the room, you hear click, 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 as all these people are just moderating and modulating themselves. So it's a very hedonistic type of area. So that world, the whole point of thing is not to develop these experiences that give you the deeper emotions and the more broad sense of emotions. Basically, you just have, oh, it'll be all right, pop a pill, it's fine. And through this, that, and the other, for those who haven't seen it, I don't want to be a spoiler, but through this, that, and the other, one of the characters, somebody from the more emotional world comes in. One of the characters has this computer program and special plug-in thing that enables her to sort of tap into the other person's experience. So in other words, we tap into other experiences, and that's another longer conversation about how the self is also created by other people's experiences, but is able to tap into this experience. And it's a very sad experience, very dramatic experience. And so she's standing there and she's going, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So therefore the overwhelm, I mean, it's a new thing. And then tears start to roll down her cheeks, and she goes, what's that? I don't know what's happening. And I'm sitting there going, there you go. There's the aware but not self-aware experience that occurs. And then, so it is not yet able to be an emotion that you can describe because it's not happening to anybody. So then she goes through the experience, and as she does that, she develops this sense and goes, oh my God, this is fantastic. I am really enjoying. This is wonderful. I want to have more of this. So the self comes in, and there becomes a new level of creativity. What do I do with this new experience? So that simple thing of curiosity that I'm sure you've all wandered on, I've spent 25 minutes expanding it, drawing it out, extending its potential meanings, giving it greater depth, giving it relationships to different aspects of mental awareness, giving it relationships to different levels of consciousness. Wow, who would have thought? But I have spent 10 years doing this. But just as a sort of a quick sort of disclaimer on this is just academic, I do this because I spent the first 20 years of my life as an actor, where this was all of what we did. First of all, we got all the information. We read the script, we look at the history, we research the types of characters. Then we do play around with it and see what comes out sort of serendipitously, method acting, perhaps to some extent, as you might call. But what we do then is we need this knowledge and these experiences and these happening in this script that we're working with. We need it to happen to someone. So we actually, as an actor, we create out of the bits and pieces of our own self, we create another self that is unique to this script. So I learned long ago that we have many selves, some that can be completely distinct from us and actually be prompted by these external ideas and thoughts. In theatre, it's in the script, what Shakespeare says or whatever, those wonderful playwrights. So that's looking at curiosity. Possibility. Okay, let's move on to the second word. I mean, I'm actually not averse to if anybody says if they need any more clarifications. Now, what we've got is we've got a little chat thing on the side. And I know that sort of the workshopy thing where everybody asks questions is tomorrow, and you certainly can save them up for then. But if any of you want to, if you just click on the chat box, I've given you a fascinating message. Hi, everyone. Anyway, that's there. So if you do have something that you want expanded a little bit now before we move on, feel free, or as we move along, feel free to do that. Okay, now we move, gosh, the quick story, because I don't want to take up time unnecessarily, but when I was teaching acting back in, I suppose I'm in my late 20s, early 30s, something that I've been moderately well known. I wasn't famous, but I was moderately well known. And I had local community and I taught acting. And I can remember with my sort of 12, 13, that's right, possibility. So it's coming. So yeah, thanks, Renee. The essence of the play. So we got there, we learnt the script, we'd done everything, and we're just about to sort of get into serious rehearsals. And I used to have a big green, one of those green chalkboards, the school, like the school had. I'm very old. Anyway, I had chalk and all that sort of stuff. And I said to the actor who was going on, I said, now class, we can discuss this as well. So you come in, the first actor is on their stage. You walk across the stage and you say hello, and they go, yeah. Say, what's going on with you? Before you say that word, what's going on with you? What's going on inside you? What are you feeling? What's going on? So there would be the obvious discussions. I'm interested in the other person, or I'm not interested, or I'm angry, or I'm happy. But we would then start to delve, and we delve deeper. And I'd even ask them questions, say, what did you have for breakfast? Or the previous meal? And they go, well, what's that got to do with it? Well, I don't know, but if you had a really heavy meal like spaghetti, maybe you would be saying it differently than if you had a really light meal. Are you hungry? Did you have nothing at all? How does that affect the way in which you say hello? And every time I did this in groups, we would fill that blackboard. Absolutely fill it. It would take us about an hour to do so. And their curiosity was just all over the place. Some, as I say, the early stages, just doing curiosity, the obvious information. Then they had to play and fiddle and experiment, and then they found out. And as they went along, they just spontaneously created self-relevant meaning so that that person could then walk up and say hello. And it have the depth and all the humanity that a true full character needs. And essentially, that's where I started this. It just took me another 35 years to figure out how to speak about it, how to speak it rather than just experience it. So, okay, now we need to go into possibility. And this is really good. Renee's saying, great, curiosity. We do look at curiosity in therapy quite a lot, but mostly we look at, we get trapped by the popular meaning of the word curiosity. We have to sort of encourage ourselves to expand. And just like me, I have a feeling, Renee, you just also said, hey, it's not just this information stuff. I can play with this, and I've got to find meaning and purpose and stuff. So I'm not talking rocket science. A lot of people are aware of it, but also a lot of people constrain themselves to these social roles. So then curiosity is the generator of the activity that moves us towards possibility. So information in itself doesn't generate possibility. Serendipitously acquired information doesn't itself generate possibility, although the playfulness developed the possibility that information could emerge. It's this next thing when it engages with the self, and this person with all their depth, whether they're walking up towards someone just to say hello, or whether they're going to do something extraordinary, like invent some amazing thing, or deal with some very complex issue, whether it's counseling or business or whatever it is. It's the nature of, do we then just rely on what we know, on what is known, our past, or do we have the ability to move into a space that is of what we don't know? And frankly, that's where we need to go. More often than not, that's where we need to go, particularly in therapy. If somebody is only working with what they know and what is already familiar with them, and they're not solving their issue, or their issue is emerging out of that level of experience, obviously what is needed is something that is not known, something that is more. And I'll pop out I'll see if this works effectively. Now, of course, we've got the screen. Let's see if I can turn it so the screen doesn't reflect in it. But there's a really interesting. Sorry, guys, I'm just adjusting the technicalities, which is me putting a box on the knee pad. Okay, this will be enough, and I'll try and turn it around there. And the exploration of this emerged in a discussion with a good friend of mine, Charlie, in America, who's been now in his 80s and doing a lot of work. And he listened to a lot of the things I talked about possibility. And he talked to me about the symbol from the runes called Dagaz, or Dagaz, I'm not quite sure how it's pronounced. And the idea of this rune, of this symbol, is that this point here is the present moment. And it exists just as a point, and of course keeps traveling. We have behind the past, and in the front, the future. So I thought, wow, that's really cool, because I've thought about this, and I think what's missing is the dimensionality of it. So I, of course, didn't bring the tissues. Just a sec. So possibility is not just moving into the future, because, or if just moving into the future gave you a possibility, then of course you wouldn't have any problems, but we do. So what's the issue? I'll just take that off the frame. Oh, that's lovely. That's the way of the world. Now it looks like a Rorschach symbol. But if we can put ourselves, terrible at drawing, so there we are, looking into the future. Here's the present moment. Behind us is, of course, our established past. And amongst the many metaphors and things that we use, it's sort of like a path. And we can go back and we can look back on the landscape of our past. And what's interesting to feel about that is that it's two-dimensional. And it has to be that. It has to be two-dimensional, because it's unchangeable, it's fixed, it's solid, it's framed. I mean, you could sort of visualize it, it's got various shapes and so on and so forth, but it's not very three-dimensional. It's all fixed. It all exists within a flat sort of context. You can't revive it or redo it. It is what it is, and that's all that's going on. Now, allowing for the fact that we can have emotional disturbance about the things in our past. Just let's look at that. That's in the past. Now, ideally, and this is what Degas shows, but it just is a two-dimensional figure, that what we have in front of us is actually, it's like a sphere. It's like a three-dimensional open space without anything fixed. Without anything fixed. The future has no fixed properties. Now, how then is our past useful, how do we use our past productively in the future? So, as I was suggesting, that if we just think about the past, all we do is what we've always done. But how do we move into the future and utilize what we have in our past? And I've imagined and just visualized that the sphere in front of us is almost like the galaxy, almost like the universe, where there are elements of known things, of what is known, all over the place. that we can utilize in our future in order to be stepping stones, or springboards would be even better, where we bounce off into this unknown space. And that is the possibility sphere of what in complexity theory is called the possibility plane. But it's more than a plane. It's all around us. We have possibilities are not restricted to a flat frame, to a two-dimensional. They're three-dimensional. Now, what is the problem in the world? Why do we struggle with possibility so much? And here's my suggestion of what happens in the way we do things, is that we actually would love to go into the possibility sphere, but we're just a little bit unsure and a little bit uncomfortable. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag a bit of my predictability. I'm just going to add some predictions, and I'm just going to put some things in there that I'm used to. And I'm going to build what I'm now calling the probability bridge. So the probability bridge is that little way of just extending comfort before you enter the getting out of your comfort zone. I mean, it's another whole long story, but why is it comfortable to stay in what you already know? Why are we not comfortable with moving into what is not known? I'm uncomfortable when I stick and stay in the usual and the known. I'm so much more comfortable if I'm adventuring and discovering and all those sorts of elements. So there are individual things, but again, there's words that get confined by common usage. So what we have is the probability bridge. Now, what I do is, so now I'm comfortable to move forward towards the possibility sphere, where things can open up and everything can be wonderful, and new things that I never imagined could become known. And then I kind of move forward a little bit more, and then I go, oh dear, that's a bit of a problem. So I kind of just push back the sphere a little bit, and I just push out my probability bridge a bit further. And what happens is we keep pushing the exciting engagement with broad-ranging sense of possibility by being secure, predictable, and having some kind of sense of safety in what is known. So that becomes a lot of the issue. Now, but Richard, I do solution-focused therapy, or I do work that I push forward, and productive work that I push forward in business coaching. So I'll say to somebody, what about this experience in the past? Have you ever had that good experience? When was the good experience? Yeah, the probability reminds me of the bridge in Indiana Jones film, and it's made out of your imagination. You actually make a predictable future out of your imagination, and you go walking out on it like a idiot. And just imagine that instead of getting to the end and jumping into the amazing stuff, you just keep pushing it out because you don't believe it. But we go back in solution-focused therapy and say, what was a good experience that you had in the past? Now let's just move that into our present. How could you reproduce that or do something with that in the present? So what we're saying is, how can you utilize this past experience in the future? And that's what these points of reliability or framework, we can imagine the best of ourselves and we can imagine the worst of ourselves into our future and utilize those things for our benefit or also for our disbenefit. We can be stuck in the past, but we can get stuck in the impossibilities that we believe the future has. But let's stick with the possibilities that we think the future has. So I say, so just imagine yourself doing this thing. And so I take them out here Imagine yourself doing that thing. I take them off the probability bridge and I take them into the curiosity. Imagine, what does it feel like? What else does it feel like? Play with it. Let's do experiment. What comes to mind? Um, uh, all those playful type of aspects. And with a bit of luck, and quite often, this is why solution focused therapy is so popular, is you take a couple of leaps and, but jing, off you go into the possibility of space. And suddenly you're saying, oh, I know how to do that. I could do that this way, or I could do that. I wonder if I tried this. And if I went over there, oh, I remember. And suddenly you get all this excitement and you get all this creative expansion. It's that insight, that insightful moment of, I know what this means to me. Now, what can I create with that? And that is the key to what I'm going to call my curiosity approach, or the possibility solution. There's kind of, they come in on each other. And that possibilities are discovered and they emerge into our awareness when we do three things. There's more or less three steps. I'm not a great believer that everything's a step, because systems do all kinds of whatever, but there's always some foundational frameworks. There's some natural embedded frameworks, like that I talked about stage one before. Our creative cycle is new information, finding how that new information is relevant to us, an emergent insight, breakthrough, which then has a new creative display, because there's new stuff for the self to create with oneself. Then the fourth stage is implementing that into your life. And so that is the way we have personal growth and change. Now that's really just a universal principle of development. Like, we don't implement something that we don't do stage 4 when we've had no information and no self-engagement and no creativity, because there's nothing to implement. So that's why sometimes you do get these linear-ish type of processes. So here's my curiosity-based three-step system that kind of changes the whole world if you live this way. If it becomes, particularly when it becomes automatic, and I've been doing this for so long, probably back when I was acting, that it becomes automatic. And the first thing is to ignite the curious mind, to ignite the curious brain cells. And without going into again, the neuroscience, I believe there is a curiosity network that's based on all the neurobiochemicals, and that of all the elements of activity, and particularly the emotionally driven activity, curiosity is the only one that actually activates and balances out almost all the chemicals in the brain. And I can talk about that on tomorrow night if anyone wants to go in a bit deeper with it. But first of all, ignite the curious brain. And the way to do that is, it's a wonderful word that Ernie Rossi has used for a long time, which he got from Otto, Stephen Bob Otto, who wrote a book on religion. But it's numinosum. That sense of the wondrous and the magnificent and the amazing and the incredible, that everything has that potential within it. But on the simple day-to-day level, curiosity is generated just by going, oh, that's interesting. And not that cynical sort of thing, oh, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. No, that's interesting. And when you say that's interesting, you're acknowledging that there's more to this, or it's got something that you don't yet know everything about. It's interesting. It's drawing me towards it. So it's drawing me towards it. It's increasing my serotonin and reducing my fearfulness. It's increasing my dopamine, which is my positive anticipation. It's kind of getting me excited and a bit thrilled. So I'm getting increases in acetylcholine and norepinephrine. So I'm getting focus of attention, and actually broad focus of attention. And as I discover little bits and pieces and things come to mind, I actually get pleasure from that. So I get my endorphins and endorphins. So there's a 30-second elevator speech on what happens in the brain when you get curious. So curiosity, that's interesting. Then comes something that kind of requires an attitude of something that you believe to be true. Now, we are taught in our lives, and we're taught in our world, in our education system, and in everything works, the cause and effect world. We're taught that Newtonian, hit a thing, it goes there. That's where we get this idea that we can predict the future by just regulating information from the past. And to some extent we can, but broadly we tend not to. We tend to predict and go forward, and everything does something else. It does something quite different. So we ignite the curious mind, and then we go, so what's this really all about? Because if you think in systems theory, everything that we can see, everything that becomes apparent, is an emergent property of a more complex set of elements interacting and bringing, and that quality of emergence comes out. And that emergent property, not only is it not the elements within it, but it actually can not even look like or feel like or seem like or indicate the elements that are within it. And just giving a very gross example, if you look at a human being, and I was talking to someone today, if you look at a human being with yellow eyes, you don't start thinking about livers. What you do is you look at a human being with yellow eyes. And if you're holding a liver that doesn't look terribly well, you can't then just imagine, assuming you'd never seen a human being before, it's very hard to imagine from that liver a human being that then has yellow eyes. So when we want to look down and see what those elements are, because those elements are now being hidden by the emergent property. So I'm hungry is an emergent property, and it's an emotional state because I am hungry. This is happening to me. But I'm hungry is just an emergent reflection of dozens of biochemical and neurobiological and physiological activities that the body goes through for almost an hour and a half in order to get to that point where we are driven for the need to have a self-aware consciousness, so that we then pick ourselves up and go to the fridge and make some dinner, make something to eat. And this is the same for things like depression, for anxiety, for disquiet, for upset, for so many of the emotions, they're emergent properties. So what's beneath it? What are the elements? And here's what's important about that in systems theory, is if you change some of the elements or alter some of the elements, I've only got a few minutes left, yes, or alter some of the elements, then those that can change the whole system to produce an entirely surprising and unpredictable emergent property. So the second one is, what's this all about? What are the deeper elements? And then you learn and you gather that. And those two things, that's interesting. And what are the elements? That could happen in milliseconds. That could happen, just immediately. Because our biology and our self-organizing system within us, now neurobiology, that actually functions in milliseconds, whereas our conscious awareness functions in pretty much seconds. So we're very slow in our awareness. And then the third one, what can I create with this? And as soon as you say that, you step off the probability bridge, that's been holding you back, and you step into the possibility sphere, that space of possibility, because you cannot create something that you already know. You can only create something that you don't know. You can utilize things that you do know. You can expand them, develop them, and engage them. But the actual creativity, that new idea, that new feeling, that greater sense, that self-development, that only happens when you move into the possibility space. And now we go, gosh, can I do that? Everybody does. You were 3 or 4 or 5 years old, you almost had no road of life experience behind you. You were almost all possibility. There was nothing other than to step into the possibility sphere, the possibility space, because you had to develop. And how many of us say, gee, I wish I was like a kid again? And ladies and gentlemen, in a detailed and perhaps extraction and exploration of all those elements, that is the nature of curiosity, the nature of possibility. And when we're dealing with COVID, that's interesting. What's it really all about? And what can I create with it? Yeah, pneumonitis is something I've observed in very young children, Neville says. And Ernie, there were 6 days where he actually was losing his life. I was talking to him 2 or 3 weeks before he died, and he was still imagining new things. What if we did this? And Richard, can you write a book? And I'm just getting a bit tired of things. What can you bring into the situation? He was trying to create with me. And I wake up every morning and I see my gorgeous Susie and I just go, wow, what amazing possibilities are going to happen to us today. And that's the way I live my life. Sometimes I get overwhelmed by stress, I get overwhelmed by anger, I get overwhelmed by fear. But I'm so quick now to go, oh no, that's interesting. I'm angry. I'm fear. That's no good. What's that all about? Oh, that's because, oh, I see. Now, what can I create with that? So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the thought exercise, the thought game about curiosity, possibility, and how crises, even like COVID, are simply an opportunity for us to move forward into the possibility sphere, to find something that we haven't found before, as well as doing those things where we try and maximize what we have. So I would say, Renee, that my time is up. I'd love to just bore you for another hour, but
Thank you so much, Richard. I'm going to just double check because we did start a few minutes late. There were some technical and human issues on my side. Just wanted to get a gauge of if there was any questions, and then if not, we'll move on to Narelle. Are there any questions?
Yeah, so you can take your mic off and ask a question, or pop something in the message board if you're
thanks, Richard.
horrified at the sound of your own voice.
Well said.
Well said, Richard.
Thank you for the possibility of possibility. Awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, great stuff. I think that's a wrap if nobody has any other questions. Thank you, Richard, for your time.
Just 10 seconds of just a thing that people might have heard of the planes of possibility. The plane of actuality, the plane of probability, and the plane of possibility. Yes. And Dan Siegel, a good friend of mine, he talks about that a lot. It's great, it's fabulous. But it's the loss of three-dimensionality. In those 3 planes, you have to go from actuality through probability to get to possibility. And this becomes the barrier. Here's the probability bridge. But if actuality and probability are simply framed within a sphere, a universe of unknowns that is accessible from actuality, from probability, from possibility, from everywhere, suddenly my life makes more sense, because I was always told to be more probable, but I was just so busy being possible. That's it.
Awesome. Okay, all right. I guess that's probably a wrap, because I've got to make sure. Unfortunately, the possibility of of running out of time is a real thing. So thank you so much, because I really do appreciate, and I think it's been great, and I think you've got a lot of people thinking. So maybe they'll ponder and remain curious on that, and bring your questions tomorrow to Richard, everyone, because tomorrow masterclass is more about bring your questions of possibility in.
Oh yeah, interaction. I'll have questions for you guys. Yeah,
absolutely. And we'll be having our screens on and questions asked tomorrow. So
anyway, off everybody goes. to the
Excellent.
next wonderful talk. My apologies, I have to go because my
Yep, all
timetable
good.
is horrible at the moment. But thank you so much, everybody, for allowing me to share a little bit of my thoughts. Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much, Renee, and I'll see you all
No
tomorrow
worries.
at
Yep.
7 o'clock.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Richard, and we'll see you then.
Bye for now.
Bye, Richard. Okay.